Magic reveals itself to those who remember where to look for it. This is Magic Hour, and I'm your host, Taylor Page. Welcome back to Magic Hour, everyone. I am Claire, your producer. This week, Taylor has been under the weather and is not feeling well enough to record our opening segment. So I will be recording a little solo segment for you. But we were really excited to get this episode to you. And we also wanted to touch on what has happened here in the last week in the US with the election. I know that most of you or all of you must be feeling a similar way that I am. It has been a devastating outcome, and I feel a lot of despair and sadness, disbelief, and fear of what is to come and what this will mean for so many people, including myself and the people that I love. And I'm not here to say that I have any real answers, because I am also just reeling from this situation. And I know so many of you are as well. So as disheartening and disappointing and devastating as this moment is, let it be a reminder to us that this fight continues and that we are being called to be this generation that takes up the fight and makes some form of progress. We may not get to the beautiful, equal world that we all want to be living in, but we can make steps towards that and further our progress, and every step towards that matters. And so that has been something that's given me hope as I think back to the people who have been in this struggle already and helped move it along and have gifted me a life where I have gotten to choose who I want to be and how I want to live. And I want to do that for everyone else around me and for the generations to come. Another thing that I wanted to bring up is community. I think community is something that will help move these things along, but also will just help with our souls and our hearts. And community is something that we actively create. So we here with Magic Hour have created a community. And it started by Taylor deciding to make this offering, and then by her reaching out to me and asking me to be a part of it. And now it extends to all of you who choose to listen in, who send in your questions and your stories, who share episodes with friends, who talk about ideas and realizations you've had when listening to episodes. This has brought us together in a community that is global, that connects strangers who have similar ideas and beliefs of love, of magic, of community, of kindness. And knowing that you are all out there and that we are connected in this space not only gives me hope, but it gives me comfort. And lastly, this will tie into the beautiful episode coming up where Taylor interviews Mariah Gannessa, who is an incredible person doing amazing work with plant medicine and the earth and Indigenous tribes. And Indigenous tribes lived in such a beautiful communal way, as far as I understand. And I think we've lost a lot of that. And I think we all can benefit from understanding the way that we used to support and come together as a community versus feeling much more isolated and individualistic. And so lastly, another thing I would love to offer is when you are feeling this hopelessness and this devastation and fear and uncertainty, connecting with the people you love and connecting to the earth is something that always helps me ground and refocuses me to the beauty of this complicated experience. Standing outside with my bare feet in the grass, hugging a tree, standing by the ocean and listening to the waves. We are a part of this beautiful planet it is holding us. And in moments like these, I like to think about how I can hold the earth myself, how I can be more of a steward for this beautiful planet. And even if that means just connecting in with it, talking to my houseplants and telling them how much I love them, going for a walk in nature and reconnecting to the experience that is bigger than these political disagreements and these regimes of power fighting for control. Those things are real and happening, but we are also part of a bigger magic. And I think connecting to the earth helps me remember that. So I hope some of these things will be helpful to you all. I'm sending you all so much love. I know this has been really difficult, and it has been for me. And I'm lucky to be in community here in LA with many people who feel the same. But if you're somewhere where your neighbors don't seem to feel the same way, know that I am your neighbor and that the rest of the hummingbird community are your neighbors. And we are here. Taylor and I are just an email away. If you need to reach out and express your pain or your fear, we're here. I hope that this episode will be a soothing balm for your hearts and your minds in this moment, knowing that there are steps we can take and that we will rise. I do believe that love always wins, and this community is so full of love, and I'm so, so grateful for every one of you. So thank you for existing. And now I would love to introduce our guest. Mariah Gannessa was born and raised in Northern California and now lives in Colombia, working directly with the Indigenous tribes. She spent the last decade immersed in the healing cultures of the Amazon and has dedicated her life's work to the plants and the peoples of the Amazon rainforest. Through her studies and opportunities to spend time with various Indigenous communities, what the people told her they need most was economic sovereignty. This led Mariah to establish 4 visions: a global leader, educator, and advocate for the study, benefits, and uses of plant medicine. 4 Visions supports these communities through direct commerce partnerships, donations, and sponsoring charitable initiatives. Mariah also founded the nonprofit organization Magic Fund, where she spearheads projects to preserve the Amazonian people, their culture, and their lands. Please welcome Mariah Gannessa.
Mariah, welcome to Magic Hour. So happy to have you here today. Before we get into the regular questions that I ask my guests at the top, I just want to bring up something that you were talking about right before we started recording so that if anybody is watching this on YouTube or watching the video, they know what we're talking about. So you're currently working with a plant to help you. What you said before was with sweet words. So can you explain to our listeners what you have in your mouth at the moment?
Definitely. Thank you so much for having me, Taylor. I'm really happy to be here and excited for today's conversation. And before we began, I sat and prayed a little bit with some medicine from the Amazon that is called mambe. And the mambe is a medicine of the sweet word, and it really helps to open our hearts and help us to tap into that place of authentic connection. And so I'm sure we'll get into this more in today's conversation, but I am a medicine woman. I work with plants and nature as allies and tools to support my connection with life itself. And this medicine, the mambecita, is a medicine that comes to us from the Colombian Amazon, comes from the Witoto tribe. And they have been working with this medicine. They utilize it in combination with a paste, a tobacco paste called ambil. And these 2 medicines are taken together traditionally to really open the heart and to bring forth this place of connection and authenticity. And so for many generations, the Witoto people have utilized this medicine in particular when it comes to creating that connection within the tribe. So they would utilize it for dialogue, to resolve conflict, or to bring greater harmony. And also traditionally it would be taken and worked with in the context of talks and teachings, and in this case, the sharing of this interview. And so it's one of the medicines that I really love to work with when I sit down and have these conversations, because it really allowed me to drop into my heart to ensure that I'm coming from that place of true sweetness and authenticity and love, as well as helping people to attune to my energy and what I'm sharing and to join me from that place.
That is so beautiful. I love that so much. And first of all, it's such a beautiful bridge that you are from ancient wisdom into the modern world, taking this plant medicine and working with it specifically to come onto a podcast and share it through technology. To me, is such a beautiful fusion of two different worlds. And I think that's what we need more of. And the second thing I was going to say is working with this plant to resolve conflict. We could use that right now. Everybody needs to take a little bit of this. The world would be a different place.
So with all the medicines of the earth, because all plants are really just helping us to come back to our nature. We are part of nature. So whenever we work with plant allies, whatever they are, whether it be, a cup of chamomile tea, to come at it from that place of dialoguing and relationship, which is really what I teach and what we really share through our platform, and this invitation to really come back to the interconnectedness of ourselves with all of life and ourselves as part of nature.
Beautiful. So now skipping to the very first question that I ask all of our guests, do you know your big three, your sun, moon, and rising?
I am not a super big astrology person, but I am a Virgo moon and a Leo sun, and I'm not sure about my rising. So that's as much as I know off the top of my head right now.
That is all good. And the Virgo moon makes so much sense to me because Virgo is the sign of the healer. It's the sign of mutable earth. It's like one of the most sensitive earth signs. So that makes a lot of sense to me, your connection with the land and that emotional requirement to be in nature. So my second question that I like to ask our guests is, how does your intuition speak to you?
It's a great question. For me, getting in touch with my intuition, connecting with my intuition is a daily practice. It's something that requires cultivation. It requires creating space to listen, because that silent voice of intuition, that inner voice of wisdom, it's always there. But if we're not listening or checking in, we don't hear the messages. And so for me, the way in which I both get in touch and listen to my intuition is very much in that creation of space and the checking in before decision making, especially if it's, a decision that I find myself being really ruled by the mind or the thinking body or even the ego, finding myself wanting to really quickly make a decision or approach something. I always take that spaciousness before doing so and give the listening ear to my intuition and my voice of wisdom within. And the other part that I just feel called to name here in this conversation as we're connecting with beautiful women mostly, and just, the sacred witch archetype and the archetype of the woman, is very much my intuition comes from my womb and from my feminine power. So for me, so much of that source is found in really the rituals of the woman and tending to my female body. And I get a lot of strength and inspiration as I do this. There are many practices that are part of my spiritual practice that are the tending to of my feminine health and my womb, because our wombs are the portals and they're the place of connection and inspiration to that channel of intuition. And so I find in the tending to my womb and the tending to my feminine being, I am able to nourish and cultivate my intuition even more so.
That's beautiful. I love your answer of creating sacred space, because that is so imperative for intuitive connection. And too many people set this intention for a message, but don't stop to create the space to cultivate enough quiet to receive. So they're always looking for the answer that they're looking for in everything around them, instead of slowing down, creating sacred space, and having enough of an emptiness to fill. And there's some energetic tie there between that sacred space and the womb space. It's two different sides of the same coin with your answer there. Like the womb space is this sacred space in the divine feminine vessel to also connect intuitively. So I really love how that answer is wrapped together in this neat bow that is all sacred space. So can you tell our listeners a little bit more about your story? Because I'm super interested about hearing about your time in the Amazon, what called you there, what it was like to live with Indigenous tribes in the Amazon. I want to hear all about it.
Of course. Thank you so much. I grew up in Northern California and I had a very standard middle class suburban upbringing. And it was a very beautiful childhood that I was blessed with. And it was actually around my 16th, 17th birthdays where I started really questioning whether there was more for me than society's expectations of what was next. So I had an interesting graduation. I graduated from high school when I was 16 years old, and I had a full ride to UCLA to go and study with the intention of becoming a Western medical doctor. It was the summer of my 17th birthday before I headed off to college when I found plant medicine for the first time. And it radically transformed my life because before then I was really living based off of what I thought other people wanted of me or what I thought was expected of me. And I was still, of course, a daughter, a girl. And so I was still in that process of coming into myself as a woman, of what I really wanted for my life. But when I found the plants, it really just catastrophically opened up my consciousness and really started to show me what was possible beyond the little view into what I had experienced up until that point in my upbringing and my childhood. And so really what ensued was this beautiful spiritual inquiry and spiritual journey where I really started to expand my consciousness and look for tools and resources to do that. And the plants was really a principal pillar for me to do so. I did go to college for a year, and it was during that year then I really realized that there was like a misalignment to what I was there for and why I was there. And so after a year, I did leave school and I went on this voyage, this quest to really uncover what I really felt was waiting for me. And that took me to many places, took me to India, to the Himalayas, and I ended up finding myself after some years in the Amazon rainforest. And it was there where my personal healing journey really began. I didn't really realize I was going on a healing journey per se until I found myself in the presence of traditional medicine doctors and healers and was invited and given an opportunity to undergo a pretty profound spiritual healing process where I really was able to get in touch with some of the depths of my own traumas and wounds and impacts from my lifetime and my ancestral lineage, what I was carrying in this lifetime, and did a lot of deep healing and realized that I had been suffering from a lot of anxiety, depression, and separateness, really, which is something that so many of us suffer from in Western society. And so first and foremost, this journey that I've been on was marked by my own healing process and being really invited in and welcomed in by this one specific family from the Ingano tribe and of Putumayo, Colombia. And so I started studying with this Taita, this traditional healer person, first and foremost, to really heal myself and to understand my own psyche, my own healing process, and uncovered many deep layers to that. And then the natural evolution was to continue studying and to start learning more about plants and more about the art of healing and how to be a healer. And so I apprenticed with him for many years. I still am an apprentice of him over a decade later. And basically what it led me to was, after receiving so much from him, from his family, from this one particular tribe, I felt deeply inspired to find a way where I could give back to the Inga tribe that had really welcomed me in with open arms as part of their family and gave me so much and really just changed my life radically forever. So that is really how the course of my service was really inspired. And what ended up happening is that I first wanted to support them. And so we created For Visions, my company, initially with the intention of supporting the Inga people. And then over the years, we started developing more relationships with other tribes throughout South America and expanding our impact and our reach little by little to really be in relationship and this place of reciprocity and service with many different regions throughout South America, throughout the rainforest. But it was really first and foremost inspired by this very personal relationship that I had with Taita Juanito and with the Ingano people. And the same with my work with my foundation, Magic Fund. We really do so much work in relationship with the tribes of Putumayo specifically, which is the southern region of Colombia where the Amazon rainforest is, working directly with the indigenous peoples there to safeguard, protect culture, lands, and legacy inheritance. That's a little bit about my story. I definitely could go more in depth. That's just a little snippet into what I'm up to right now.
That's perfect. I definitely want to dive deeper into different points about what you just said. I know a lot of our listeners are on paths that have been laid out for them that are not authentic to who they are anymore. And specifically, I have a lot of clients who are doctors and nurses who just do not resonate anymore with Western medicine. But with that being said, I know there's a place for Western medicine, especially in emergency situations, but they feel that the system is not set up for health, it's set up for sickness. And what I loved about your story is that you were going to be a doctor, you were going to med school. So you already had this archetype of the healer within you, but that wasn't your path. And I think it feels so scary for people to diverge. There's a witch wound there. There's a fear of what people will think about you. There's a fear of people will think you're quote unquote woo woo, which I take as a compliment. So I want to speak a little bit about the bravery. Like, you had a full ride scholarship to UCLA. Your path was laid out. Everything that your family, that society, that everybody wanted you to be was right in front of you. And instead of pushing down that little voice in your heart space that said, this is not for me, instead of pushing that down and then being burnt out and lost and resentful a little bit later, you listened to that call and you followed it. And I think that takes tremendous bravery. And I think it's never too late to listen to it. You can change your life and reconnect with your path at any time. And so can you speak a little bit about what it was like? Was that voice always enough for you to have no fear? Was there self-doubt? Was there shadow? What did that look like for you? What did you have to overcome to walk your authentic path after a lifetime of societal conditioning?
Thank you. That's a beautiful question and really important to really just highlight. For me personally, it definitely was a big leap of faith. And the results of it was definitely many years of oscillating in the unknown. And so for me, it wasn't so much that I ever regretted my decision, but it was more about getting comfortable with the unknown and being able to surrender to the potential of what was existing for me if I just kept walking forward in faith that there was something beautiful awaiting me in my journey. You know, everyone's journey looks different, and I completely agree with you. There's always the space to choose to live more authentically and to choose to realign our lives and make radical choices that really take us closer to that place of authentic living. And there's so many ways that looks like for people because, you know, we all have our certain responsibilities. We all have, you know, our situations, our life situations that we're in, and each one, it looks different. For me, you know, I was very young. I had no children, no relationship. All I had was the expectation of my family, which granted, that was a big one, right? But for someone who is 40, 50 years old, has children and a spouse and an established career, that process might look a lot different. So for me, in that youth, in that innocence, I think in some ways it was almost easier because I wasn't navigating so many different layers. It was really just the one layer of explaining to my parents why I was walking away from that scholarship. It's funny, it took my grandparents many, many years to accept my decision. And actually, as recently as like last year, my grandparents were able to tell me that they were proud of me and that they accepted my decision. But, you know, especially when we're looking at things like a college education or a degree, these are things that, depending on the generation, there's so much weight put into the value of these things. So it's definitely multifaceted when we make those big choices in our lives. But ultimately, we're the only ones living our life. And we have to live with the decisions that we make. And so even if it's our children or our spouses, at the end of the day, if we are not fulfilled in the life that we've created for ourselves, we're the only one that has to answer to that. And we're the only one that has to go to bed at night feeling that lack of fulfillment and dissatisfaction with where we're at. Ultimately, I believe that all of our loved ones, regardless of their ability to comprehend or support, can understand that eventually on a fundamental level if we have the courage to live our truth and to live our life from that place of radical self-honesty and authenticity. And so, yeah, that's really what is coming up for me the most as far as this question. And I think that the biggest piece for me personally was really just choosing my life for me and really getting clear about why I was here. And I wasn't here to satisfy or fulfill the joy or the pride of anyone other than my relationship with me and to be good with me. So it was a really big decision that I personally made in my life. And I think that, is something that we all have to make, whether we're talking about big decisions or we're just talking about our daily lives, is this element of radical responsibility in the sense that we're the only ones who get to decide if we're happy with our lives or not. And we're the ones who have to live with our choices on a daily basis. It was really a personal decision fueled by a lot of blind faith, I would say.
That's beautiful. I love that. And lately, I've really been coming back to this idea that happiness truly is a choice. As long as you're not in survival mode and your basic needs are met. So I'm not speaking about people in like war-torn countries and things like that. I'm speaking about people whose basic needs are met. Happiness truly is a choice. So I love that you said that. And going back to that idea of how it was a bit easier for you because you were fresh on your path, you had optimism, you were a bit younger. I just feel called to say a couple things. If you are listening to this in your 40s or 50s and you have kids and you have responsibilities, I just really want to come back to this idea that it's never too late to change. It's never too late to make a new decision, and no experience is wasted. That everything that you have lived, the wisdom you've gained, everything you've learned up to this point, your angels and guides will use that in where you go next. So there is no such thing as wasted time. Every single thing is working towards your benefit, your growth, and where you can go from here. And also, if you have kids, it's even more of a reason to choose your heart. And even if there's some struggle associated with that, it's such a gift to give to your kids, to let them see you start something new, to follow your passion. It's such a beautiful example for them of living in your joy. And I know there will be magical ripple effects with that. And the other thing I wanted to comment on is that doctors and nurses and healers in the traditional fields, that doesn't mean that you're not spiritual or that you didn't follow the call of your heart. Where everybody's call is different. That wasn't authentic to Mariah's path as a healer, but I know when I was in the hospice with my mom, the nurses there were the literal earth angels. Like, they are just such special people. So this is in no way to bash the pathway of going down Western medicine. It's just to say that's not the only way to be a healer and to stay open to what that looks like. So I just wanted to clarify a couple of things. That being said,
Taylor. Can I say something to that point?
Absolutely.
Okay?
Yeah. Yeah, please.
Thank you for saying those things. And I really appreciate you naming both of those themes. And just, I feel like there's a connection there between choosing joy and happiness and also recognizing that there are so many different ways to show up authentically. And I also feel like naming this element of finding ways to be in greater alignment in small ways too. It doesn't have to be as big as like choosing to change your career or moving across the world. There are so many little steps that we can take to be in that place of greater presence and joy in each moment and each day. And the people who find themselves in a life situation that perhaps is not what you expected for yourself or looks different than what you had imagined, finding ways to go deeper into the ceremony of life in what you've been given and to utilize so many resources of presence, of gratitude, of connection as ways to live more authentically in our lives, whatever that looks like. One of the things that I really love, my teacher always talks about, is you can be the barber or the person at the checkout counter or the person at the deli. Doesn't matter what role you're playing or the job that you have. It matters the energy that you're putting into it. And just like you said, with the hospice person being this angel for your family, if we can do what we do from a place of true love and dedication and beauty and passion, we can change lives. And it's not so much about the name or the title we have, but the energy from which we do it. And that's really the art of good living. And that's really what I talk about in my journey and my teachings, is how we bring this consciousness into our everyday life. Not so much that each one of us has to go off and become a healer in the sense of the word or leave our families or whatever. It's more of like, how do we bring that energy of this way of living into our lives here and now in each day and how we show up. So I just wanted to add that to this conversation.
Thank you so much for adding that. And here. And in the mediumship world, which I'm a medium, we would say spirit works through everyone. So when we are, just like you said, in our authentic joy, in our hearts, in our love, spirit is shining their light. You don't have to just be a psychic medium. You don't just have to be a plant medicine healer. Spirit shines its light through love in all different forms. So I think that's so beautiful. And it hit me in like a full heart way when you said the ceremony of life. Thinking of life as a ceremony that our soul is going through is so interesting to me, and a concept that I've never thought about before. And it kind of goes back to that idea of happiness is a choice. Like as we go through the ceremony, which is duality, ups and downs are all part of the ceremony. Can we choose happiness? Can we choose health? Can we choose power? Can we choose authenticity? And that truly is the point of the ceremony and the initiation of this soul consciousness. I think that's so beautiful.
Yeah, it's really about just like how we show up in each day and giving honor to the gift of life and really greeting each sunrise, recognizing that this is a gift. We don't know if we have another one. And to really just embody that teaching that every gift is a moment and to learn how to treasure it. I'm a mother. And so for me, the way I relate to my kids and the way I relate to my family, that is the ceremony too. It's not just about my work as a healer, my work with Four Visions. Like it's the day to day. It's how I'm relating to the ones I love the most. It's how I'm relating to myself and really being able to show up and recognize that here I am presenting myself to life and giving honor to the gift that I've been given, this life, this breath, this moment, and bringing back the sacredness, as every moment is so sacred. And so often we get so caught up in the doing and the busyness and the achieving, and this distracts us from the potency of what it means to truly be alive. And that's really the gift, is learning each day how we come into greater union and knowing and embodiment of how to live a good life.
Absolutely. And this leads me right into where I wanted to go next, which, apologies if I don't get the name right, but I believe you spoke about spending significant time with the Inga people. And I want to ask you how that differed from going from our society, from living in Northern California, to all of a sudden being in a completely different pace of life, set of values, culture, how that was different, and also what they have to say about our society.
Yeah, there's a lot I could say about that and just my time with Indigenous cultures as a whole, because I've learned so much about both the Western psyche and the path of healing by spending time with Indigenous cultures, because their perspectives on living and the perspectives on what's important is so radically different from our society. One thing that really fascinated me, for example, my teacher, Taita Juanito, who's Ingano, he spent obviously his whole upbringing with his people, but then in his adult life, he started sharing more with Western cultures, and he is the traditional medicine doctor. So he started healing more Western people, more sharing the medicines and his culture with the West. And through this process, he got to study the Western psyche, and over the years shared with me a lot about what he observed in this process, because the reality is the Western psyche is very different than the psyche of Indigenous people who are highly intact with their relationship with nature. And so, so much of the Western diseases and infirmities that we experience, they don't experience those infirmities in the same way or at the same rate in the Amazon, in their culture, and in their traditional communities. And that was really fascinating to me because one thing he said is, I'm learning as I'm studying and I'm healing and working with the West. I'm learning so much about sickness because I'm encountering sickness that we don't have. And so he had to learn how to heal and support many people from the West in his travels and in his work and service. And it was fascinating to him because it opened up so much to him that he never experienced before or saw in the traditional community. So when it comes to the differences in the way we perceive life, there's so much that I could say here, but some of the principal elements that really stand out for me is this element of interconnectedness with all beings and with all life and with nature that is very prevalent as a core foundational pillar of many, many Indigenous cultures and their philosophy and their views. In the West, we are so separate from each other, and we have really, over the last 200, 300 years with the development of the nuclear family and the shifting away from intergenerational living, that really only solidified this separation that we all experience in our society today. And it's very much this individualistic mindset in the West where each one is for themselves. It's this survivalist based mindset, but fundamental in Indigenous people's perspectives on good living is to tend to the community and to understand that we are only as strong or as healthy or as well as the sum of all of our parts. And so the community's wellness or the community's state of health is defined by the sum and the overall combination of all the different people in a community. And so from this place, if someone is struggling or if someone is suffering, the entire community will show up to tend to that person or to that family, to really lend a hand and support and recognize that we are all in this together. And so that is one really strong piece that stood out to me and really radically changed my own lens too of how I want to live and how I want to interact with the world. And then the other piece is very much that same interconnectedness, but in relationship to nature. So it's funny because in Western society, it's everyone owns land or wants to own land one day. And this concept of having a plot of land or a home that you can call yours is so ingrained in our values of success, and everyone strives for that. And for many Indigenous cultures that I have worked with and had the privilege to spend time with, it's not seen anything like that. Our relationship with the earth is very much just that, a relationship. If we have the honor to steward a land or to have a part of the earth that we can call ours, it's very much from this place of how do we care for Mother Earth? How do we care for the flora and the fauna? How do we protect the biodiversity? How do we honor this sacred gift that we've been given to tend a part of Mother Earth, and to do so from this place of relationship, of giving and receiving? Fundamentally ingrained in all traditional rituals and cultures is this element of honoring the Earth Mother and honoring nature. So every single Indigenous tribe and culture has their rites and rituals and traditions of, just like giving thanks and honoring the land, making offerings, ceremonies. And through dance and song and ritual, they have their traditions of ways in which they are in relationship rather than this exploitation and taking. The Western psyche is very much that of what can I get from something? So we are very much in our nature or in our tendencies, always looking to see how we can benefit or capitalize on something. Whereas for the Indigenous peoples, when it comes to relationship with nature, it's very much from the lens of how can I be a protector? How can I be a warrior of the Earth Mother, in the sense of can my actions serve to preserve, to protect the pristine beauty of this gift of life and of nature? The third aspect that I'll just name to round out this element, although there's so much more that I could share, is the element of honoring transition, ritual, and initiation, which is something that has been so fundamentally lost in our Western society, but is very much a key fundamental pillar for Indigenous cultures all around the world, and really is naming and honoring these key moments of transition in our lives, whether it be from child to adolescent, initiations into manhood or into womanhood, honoring of when the boy is seen as a man in the community, or when a daughter gets her first mood, her first menstruation. These are key indicators and moments of initiation that are celebrated, revered, and respected, and deeply honored for Indigenous peoples. And throughout our lives, whether it be in the transition to being wed and being a partner, or being in marriage, or then transition to parenthood, motherhood, fatherhood, or the initiation into grandmotherhood or grandfatherhood, and to the role of the elder. These are initiations that come with their own set of rites and rituals depending on the culture, and really stand as fundamental points in the wheel of the ceremony of life and of the human experience to give honor to the sacredness of the passing of time. We in Western society have very much lost this. We've lost the ability to even name these fundamental moments of transformation. And as we have lost this, we've also very much lost our ability to give vocabulary to our identities within the culture, because we don't really see ourselves as initiated into manhood or initiated into womanhood. We kind of just find ourselves in these times in our lives. And because we don't have that proper honoring or welcoming, it really contributes to this sense of lostness or confusion that we experience in our society. And so that's the final piece in these three kind of main observations that I have. But there's so many fundamental differences when it comes to traditional perspectives on living versus Western society. And the last thing I'll just say is that these ways are part of all of us, because we all have Indigenous lineage and inheritance in our bloodline, whether it be, 4, 5, 10, 15, 20 generations back. We are all Indigenous to the earth. And so all of us have ancestors that at one point in time participated in this type of consciousness. And so it's not necessarily that this perspective is only available to Indigenous people. And part of my work in this world is to support people in recognizing and remembering this ancestral wisdom that lies in all of us, and to find ways to reincorporate it back into the way in which we live, and really reorient to this way of living. Because when we speak about the lens or the perspective, my perspective and my lens has changed radically over the course of my 12 years in this process of investigation on this journey. And even though I'm still very much a white woman from the United States, the way that I perceive life is much, much different now than how, mainstream modern society perceives life. And it's actually very much returning closer and closer to the perspective or the viewpoint of that very ancestral way of interacting with life itself. And so it's really very much something that is like a process that each one of us can do if that's something that calls to us. And it's easy to hear about these beautiful ways of living and feel like it's so foreign, and it's really not. It's innate in all of us, and it's really about remembering and rediscovering what it is. And there's so many ways to do that. Getting in touch with our ancestors and our own lineage is a really beautiful principal key pillar into discovering that for ourselves, and oftentimes learning more about how our ancestors interacted with life can give us a lot of strength and insight and inspiration into this process. But really for each one of us, the question becomes, am I happy with how I'm viewing life? Or do I feel like my perspective is actually tainting or diminishing the experience of life itself? And is there a way for me to shift some of the perspectives that I have, or to maybe expand my consciousness and the way in which I perceive life, in order to return and come into greater alignment with this way of relating?
That's so beautiful. And I found myself getting a little emotional as you were speaking, because it's so true. And we've skewed so far from the path. And if we were all connected to our community and nature and our initiation ceremonies, we'd be much less easy to control. We would be much less inclined to buy things to fill a hole in our heart. That hole in our heart is missing community, nature, and spirit. And that's what these communities, Indigenous communities, never forgot. And so it's so powerful. It's like the whole time you were speaking, I was like, I want to go there. That's the kind of life that calls so deeply to my heart. And it's never been more imperative for this wisdom to be remembered and shared in a big way. And I think that your four visions offering to this world is like more necessary than ever in the way that you're amplifying this wisdom and these elders and these communities. Because as of recording, Hurricane Helene just happened. Global warming is amping up. It's the earth is calling out for help. Our bodies are calling out for help. My husband and I both lost a parent to cancer 2 years ago, which I'm sure is one of the diseases that Taito Juanito is like, wow, we barely have this here. I'm sure autoimmune is something that he did not know very much about. It's like everything, these things are messengers. They're telling us that we are out of alignment, but then we don't know what's the answer then? How do we get into alignment? And it's go back to the roots, go back to who we really are. And that is what these Indigenous cultures are doing. And we've skewed so far into consumerism and into individualism. And it truly isn't sustainable for the planet. And I think people think that it sounds so scary to be disconnected or to unplug our phones or to not have the brand new iPhone every year. But in reality, we have to disconnect to reconnect.
100%. Yeah. And I love what you're saying of just like the answer is not so much about discovering anything new.
Yes.
It's simply about remembering the truth that's been here all along, right? In that sense, there's actually a lot of hope here because it's not so complicated. And of course, like we look at everything that's happening in the world at this time and it's overwhelming, right? And we feel just the heaviness of what the human consciousness is facing right now. But the answers are right in front of our faces. And I really do believe that in the course of our lifetimes, we are going to start to see a rapid returning and reemerging of the ancestral wisdom that is here waiting for us to remember. I'm so grateful for so many of the Indigenous peoples and the original stewards of these sacred lineages who are really keeping the flame to this connection alive, who have been tending the fire for many generations through it all, colonialism, it's the exploitation, the forgetting, and just the deep process that humanity has been through as we have found ourselves off track. But here we are, and more people are looking at where we find ourselves and starting to ask bigger questions and starting to connect the dots and starting to really see the path forward being very much the path backwards, back to the origin, back to the ancient ways, the traditional ways. And so I have a lot of hope amidst all of the intensity and all the heaviness of what we're facing. I do strongly believe that over the period of the next 40, 50 years, there is going to be this massive wave of remembrance taking place, and we're all playing a part in that, this conversation, sitting down, amplifying these important topics and really asking these questions. Everyone who's tuning in and listening, even our thirst to find the answers and our openness and willingness to see the truth is going to pave the way and open the doorway for us to find the answers that our society and the collective is so desperately needing.
Absolutely. I love that so much. And one last thing I want to circle back to that you said was how in the Indigenous cultures, the majority of them have a way, if not all, of looking at the person who is struggling in society and using them as a yardstick for the success of their society. And I think it's very interesting that here in the States, at least, like people who are homeless on the streets, people who are mentally ill, we ignore them. We pretend they're not human. They're not there. And I think that in a more zoomed out lens, that's symbolic of the pieces of ourself and our own healing that we're not looking at. There's a big shadow in this country that we haven't integrated, that we haven't looked at, that we haven't called a spade a spade. And I think the quote unquote undesirables, the people that we pretend don't exist, the people that we walk by on the street, are symbolic of what we as a community and a culture won't integrate and look at.
Yeah, I definitely agree. There's this tendency for us to really just turn a blind eye to our own awareness of our own shit, for lack of a better word, because we're really happy to own the things that feel like we have a vocabulary for, or the things that maybe are societally accepted. And then the things that maybe are not so accepted, let's say depression or dependence on a pharmaceutical, these things are definitely becoming less stigmatized. But when it comes to us really being radically honest with ourselves about what's needing attention in our lives, we've become very complacent, and we become very, very much willing and very much active in sweeping things under the rug, not addressing them, not owning it. And it's really hard to live like that, because it's like we're half telling ourselves the truth, but there's a lot of things that we're still lying to ourselves about. So the part of a spiritual journey, or a journey of radical transformation, does require a willingness to really incorporate and enter into a relationship of radical self-honesty, and the willingness to look at all of our shadows and work on them, to acknowledge that we're not perfect, but be ready to transform and devote time and energy to by getting better each and every day, and approaching life from this place of the student. I think part of our society, we're really all about just claiming what we know. And even in just going back to the element of Western education, we study, 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 and then we have this degree, and then, we are a proficient and can really claim what we know. But we spend so much time talking about what we know, we kind of forget about everything that we don't know, or we don't feel comfortable saying what we don't know. And so part of this, what you're speaking to, of just, the element of our society that really separates, or doesn't want to look at, or doesn't want to acknowledge, or even recognize that this is part of us, is also speaking to this healing journey that we really need to go on as a collective, to take this level of ownership, why we're sick and why we're so separate, why there are so many cases of mental illness and suicide and drug abuse, and to really start to address at a fundamental core these elements that have caused so much dysfunction within our society, and be willing to really work together to approach these important, really big things from a holistic lens.
Absolutely. And a message that comes through all the time for me is that the eye of the storm is always radical honesty. That the eye of the storm is always getting in touch with how we truly feel, instead of playing judge and jury in our head, trying to go back and forth arguing over the truth of what's in our heart. So that actually leads me into plant medicine. I think this can be one of the areas, and let me know if I'm right about this, where it can expand our consciousness. It can show us what we don't know. It can help us integrate parts of our shadows that were lurking in the subconscious. So I'm wondering, what was the first plant that called to you, and how did you find that connection to this plant medicine and healing path?
Yeah, the first plant that called to me was ayahuasca, which is a master plant, visionary plant found in many different regions of the Amazon, that is used by many different indigenous tribes throughout South America. And for me, this process definitely was very much that uncovering of the depths of the things that lay so hidden that I didn't even know they were hidden, and really allowed me to tap into a deeper level of connection with self and spirit, and an intimate connectedness with all life that was really so important for me in my own healing journey. And I just want to preface this as we kind of transition to plant medicine, because plant medicines are not for everyone, and they're really just one door that we can utilize, and one element and just one tool that can be utilized in our spiritual inquiry, to expand our consciousness and to do healing work. I'm sure on this podcast, you talk about many different ways to do that, and many different doorways that could be utilized for the consciousness expansion. And my journey has not been exclusive to plants. And I also just want to clarify that. I did mention I went to India and I spent many months in the Himalayas. And so for me, yoga and meditation have been a profound, fundamental part of my spiritual journey, my spiritual path and practice. And for me, with the plants, they are really fundamental pillars in my spiritual studies and my spiritual practice because they allow me just that, what you're describing, this inquiry and ability to expand into other states of consciousness and uncover information, cosmic information that exists outside the thinking mind that we can then utilize to inform our decision making, to seek guidance and counsel on our journey and our path, that we can utilize in our healing processes. For me, plant medicine was incredibly supportive for forgiveness, reconciliation with the past, and coming into a greater acceptance of who I was, finding self-love, all the elements that were very integral and important to my journey of empowerment and my spiritual process. But of course, these processes can be done in so many different avenues, and there's so many different tools and resources available to us to do this. The plants, you said, I think you used the word called to you. And when in context of the plant medicines, that the plants will call to you if there is that interest and also willingness and readiness of the person to engage in a relationship with a certain plant ally or plant medicine. Ultimately, listening to that call, answering that call can open the doorway into greater exploration with plants. Maybe it starts with just one plant ally and then you enter the world of plants and it's infinite. And the plant medicine of the ayahuasca was the primary plant that kind of started my journey and opened me up to the world of traditional botany, ancestral botanical healing. Now I work with many different plants on a daily basis, and there are the master visionary plants that are traditionally done in a ceremonial context and really induce that shamanic journeying experience. And then there are plant allies that serve as support and offer us a tremendous amount of different resources, such as spiritual protection, cleansing, avenues and vehicles from which to participate in ritual and ceremony, and to offer prayers, spiritual offerings and payments to nature and spirit. And so there's so many different ways to utilize plants, and the visionary plants such as the ayahuasca or the peyote or the San Pedro, these are often spoken about and given a lot of hype, and they definitely can play a very fundamental role if that's right for a certain person. But I believe that we all can benefit from working with plants in different contexts than just shamanic ceremonial use. So through Four Visions, we share a lot of different tools that are not necessarily shamanic in sense, but they are plant allies and they come from nature, and they help us to relate to nature and to deepen our relationship to the natural world. And this can be very, very beneficial for all of us, regardless of what our spiritual path looks like or spiritual practice. We could be a devout yogi or meditator or a Reiki practitioner, whatever our practice is. Working with plants is really supportive for getting in greater touch with our intuition and with the greater consciousness that exists all around us, because it helps us to remember and to embody this greater knowing that we are part of nature. So that's one of the main things that the plants have taught me and showed me over the years, and one of the main things that I love and am inspired to share with others.
I love that so much. And I really love that you said plant medicine might not be for everyone, that it's one avenue to spiritual connection, but it's not the only way. And I'm really glad you said that, because in recent years, it's become very trendy, which can present its own dangers. And I feel like some people who might not know what they're getting themselves into are kind of just taking a stab in the dark of having this experience. But I feel that when you're ready, the teacher appears and it's a calling. And I feel like the plant calls you and fuels you with curiosity or hunger for knowledge or to find the right teacher. So if you aren't sure about doing plant medicine, maybe do more research, see if it resonates in your heart, see if you feel called. But there's no pressure to do anything that doesn't resonate with you, because your guides will lead you in the perfect way for you. And Mariah, I love the integrity of Four Visions and how you amplify the voices of people in this space who are true masters and Indigenous leaders, because I find that when things are trendy in the spiritual world, it can, first of all, just be appropriation. It can be harmful to the people. There can be very unsafe conditions and people who are not fully trained leading people through journeys. There can be a lot of red flags in this space because of how much awareness has been shined on it. So I'm really happy that you're creating a portal for authentic, grounded, trained master voices in the space to be shared. Is there any type of red flag or criteria or something you can share with our audience to look out for if in the context of somebody who's a practitioner that might not be fully grounded in the honor of the ritual?
Yes, definitely. Be happy to. And I just want to also clarify that we don't sell shamanic visionary journey plans through Four Visions. So we're an ancestral botanical company. We source the ally plans, right? I just
Yeah.
wanted to clarify that for anyone who's listening. And I'd be more than happy to speak to the context of working with a practitioner in a ceremonial context because it is very, very important. So there are so many different ways to experience plant medicine. Obviously, we've been talking about my own personal experience a lot on today's episode in regards to training and studying directly with an Indigenous lineage holder. This is a tremendous honor, and I'm so grateful to have had this opportunity. But I also recognize that not everyone has the ability or the opportunity to travel into the Amazon jungle to receive plant medicine directly from an Indigenous shaman or lineage carrier in this way. And I just want to name that and say that's okay. And you can still participate in a good way with plant medicine, either where you live in the US or traveling to maybe a place that's not as exotic as the Amazon jungle. And so there are ways to participate that do not look like a traditional Indigenous ceremony. That being said, there are things to look out for. I would really define it by three different practitioners. So one would be the traditional Indigenous led experience. The other would be a highly trained by an Indigenous person, ayahuasquero, someone who has proper training and has been given the authority and the permission from whichever altar they're carrying. It's also really important to always understand whatever the medicine is, who are the original stewards and carriers of that particular medicine? And to start there by educating yourself about whatever the original tribe who carried and work with that medicine are, because from that place, you'll be able to vet the practitioner with greater awareness by asking them questions about who they studied with. And if they come to you with some story of they studied with this person, this person, this person, and it's not very clear, that could be a red flag from the beginning, especially if they're serving this medicine that is very clearly from, you know, the Matsis tribe, if it's Kambo or ayahuasca, you know, which is, you know, specifically specific tribes and traditions that work with ayahuasca. So that's one type of practitioner. And then the third would be someone who may have gotten some sort of training and some sort of like Western certification experience and may claim a lot of things, but really they don't have any background or traditional training. So maybe they learned from an ayahuasquero, but they never actually got initiated or given a traditional authority from a traditional medicine carrier. That's the one that you want to look out for the most, because depending on the medicine, there are certain medicines that possibly could be administered by someone who hasn't received traditional authentic training from a lineage, but not all the medicines really fit under that category. Possibly in some circumstances, Kambo, but again, Kambo is the frog medicine, and that medicine also is very, very sacred and has tremendous amount of tradition and lineage behind it. And unfortunately, in today's day and age of the commodification and certification of everything to the moon and back, there's so many combo practitioners and plant medicine practitioners all over the place that are really practicing and serving and administering that really don't have the proper training and the skill sets to be doing so. So the first red flag is really, you know, understanding what their background is and what they're saying that they received as training and initiation. And then some really common sense things would be like, do you feel safe with them? Do they have a medical intake form, and how in depth is it? And depending on the medicine, because this is so dependent on each particular medicine, but there are contraindications. So if a practitioner doesn't seem familiar with that or isn't asking you for your medical background, that's another big red flag. Also, in regards to preparation, each one of these medicines do require a lot of preparation to be able to do them in a good way, to have the body be prepared to receive these medicines. So there's like a cleansing process. There's a spiritual diet and a physical diet that is required for most shamanic visionary medicines, both before and after, that are really imperative to being able to receive the medicine and be ready for it, as well as prepare the physical body for that work and to be safe. And so if a practitioner ever like pressures you into coming last minute or tells you that it doesn't matter that you didn't do the preparation, that would be another red flag. But wow, Taylor, there's so many, and really looking at getting a personal reference from a trusted friend for anyone that you go to work with. And this is for anything. It's not just plant medicine, but you have to be particularly vigilant when it comes to plant medicine. Doing your research, looking at testimonials and reviews, and really not just going off of any source you find on TripAdvisor, but really talking to people who sat with those people and getting personal references, and in doing your research to really inquire and see. And then when you go to a plant medicine experience, if you ever feel unsafe or there's any level of doubt there that things are being done the way that they should be, it's really important to trust your intuition. And so that could be from what you're observing in the environment, what's going on with other participants, to the way in which, the ceremony is being prepared, to the opening talk. There's so many different elements. And if you ever feel pressured at any point to stay or to participate, or to just let go of the mind and you're okay, we're going to take care of you. These are also really big red flags in the plant medicine space, because at the end of the day, you need to trust your intuition. If you don't feel safe, there's a reason for that. And it's very important to listen to that. And if you ever are pressured by the practitioner, or any concerns you bring up to a practitioner are either brushed away or invalidated, that's also really, really important to recognize and utilize your discernment. So overall, it really does come down to discernment. Of course, if we're new to a space, it can feel like overwhelming to make the decision of who to work with and all these things, but it's part of the process. If you're feeling called to the medicine, proper due diligence is it's one of the first steps that we take before we work with the medicine. So just know that is, part of the preparatory stage, and there's no rush with working with plant medicines. You need to feel like it's absolutely the right time, the right person, the right place to really feel that level of safety and confidence with your experience. And even if you show up and go to an event and it doesn't feel right, there's no need to like force yourself to go through with it, anything like that. It needs to feel 100% right and secure and safe for things to really be just good. If you're working with a non-Indigenous person, also just having awareness of that element. Sometimes that can be okay, especially if you feel like the space is properly tended to, that you're properly tended to. There are non-Indigenous people in the plant medicine world that are facilitating in a good way. I'm not saying that there aren't, but the reality is that if we are not from a lineage and we're offering a medicine that's not our ancestral birthright and inheritance, we have to recognize that there is like a disconnect there on some level. And each practitioner is different. They have a different background, they have a different training, different experience level. And so it's not to say that all non-Indigenous practitioners should be disregarded, but to have even extra discernment with that. But really, this level of vigilance is important across the board. And there's a wide range of quality of care when it comes to plant medicine. And it's really important to understand that from the get-go. And even going down to an Indigenous-led center does not necessarily mean that it's going to be in integrity. And that's super important to also just name. So really asking things about their integration protocol, what services that they provide for extra additional support should and if you need that, and really getting a greater sense of their emergency staff, like if they have any Western medical providers on staff that could support should an emergency arise, as well as if they have any therapists or psychologists, or what their spiritual support post ceremony looks like, can also be some good indicators of the overall integrity of a center or of a provider. So I think that's like covering all the bases there, but really like in a nutshell, just do your research and listen to your intuition.
Thank you so much for that. And I love that Four Visions helps people access the plant allies and that a portion of the profits goes to support the indigenous cultures that you're in connection with. And I know that our listeners will want to support that and support you and support your work. So where can everybody find you?
Thank you. Yes, please check us out at fourvisions.com or join us on the social media world, Four Visions Tribe. My personal Instagram is Mariah Gannessa, and we share a lot of incredible resources for really working with plants and integrating plants and nature into your daily life and your practice. And we really feel that there's something for everyone at Four Visions. Our platform is designed to really meet everyone with where they're at. So it's not necessarily that you need to be like gung-ho, ready to go into full-on plant medicine world to be serviced by Four Visions and our platform. We really seek to tend to people whether they're looking for natural remedies and relief from physical symptoms to emotional and mental support to deeper spiritual healing and spiritual studies and spiritual transformation. So we really, all of our plants and our products really navigate those three bodies and those three lenses. And people can work with our medicines and our tools on a very surface level, or can utilize our medicines to go very deep and do plant diets and profound spiritual studies and the context of their home, guided and supported by our resources and the offerings that we provide. So we really, our platform is all encompassing to really support everyone on their journey, however they're wanting and needing it. And we really hope and pray that our offerings can support people in this process that we've been discussing in the conversation today of really just returning back to our connection with life and nature and the natural world. This is really what we're all so deeply needing and seeking at this time in humanity's evolution. And so our prayer is that through our services and our offerings, people can find that in whatever way resonates and works for them.
Amazing. Thank you so much for being so generous with your time and your wisdom. I could ask you a million more questions, so you'll have to come back one day. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much, Taylor, for having me. It was a pleasure. And thank you, everyone, for tuning in and listening. Many blessings to you all.
Hello, my loves. Welcome to Sitting with Spirit, a very special edition because, as I mentioned at the beginning of the episode, Taylor has been sick all week and didn't feel well enough to channel messages for us. So I will be attempting to do that on this week's episode. And I am not a professional reader or intuitive like Taylor is, but I do have my own practice where I pull cards for myself when I need support and help. So maybe this can be for anyone who's looking to strengthen their own intuition and is on that same journey that I am. This can be an example of doing that and taking that leap of faith. And if these messages resonate with you, amazing. And if they don't, take what works, leave the rest. And if it seems like something that would resonate with someone you know, you can pass that along to them. So I used my favorite deck, Goddess Power by Colette Baron-Reid. I absolutely love this deck. It's full of beautiful goddess imagery and has such a strong feminine energy that I really tap into. So I did a first pull and I pulled this card, Revelation. I'll show you. And I didn't really feel like it resonated. So I decided to do another pull and I pulled it again. So I'm going to go with it, even though it had kind of an unexpected message. And the second card I pulled was Shakti, Transformation. And I pulled that one reversed. And I'm actually going to start with Shakti. I still read the explanation from the card decks because I'm more of a beginner. So Shakti, Transformation. Sometimes people and situations come into your life as the kind of change agents that turn your life upside down. What you thought was real and expected is challenged by someone else's perspective or behavior, which you have no control over. This can be painful and deeply confusing, but the creator goddess Shakti wants to offer you her guidance. Can you see how everything that is off balance is serving you now, helping to open old wounds so they can finally heal? You know you are seeking this change, this magical metamorphosis for a better life for you and your loved ones. Right now, your alignment task is to love that part of yourself that sabotages your efforts to move forward. Love the insecure you, the one that is jealous, the one that sees not enough when the world is truly full of potential. Life loves you. The feminine aspect of the universe, the great goddess herself, all your angels and your guides and helpers, remind you that you came here as a spiritual being learning to co-create the world anew. I feel like that applies so deeply to this moment. And it's something that I'm trying to do to reframe what we're facing. Something that Taylor's talked a lot about is the witch wound, and how when we are in the throes of the witch wound, we attract our oppressor. And I don't think we attract our oppressor because we're weak and we aren't in our power, and so our oppressor can prey on us. I think we attract our oppressor to challenge us to work through and heal the witch wound. And I feel like that is happening on a major scale right now. What we are facing is that part of ourself or ourselves, the insecure part of us, the one that is jealous, the one that sees not enough. You know, this fearful scarcity consciousness that has led us to this moment of divide and anger and hate. That is a part of our collective psyche that needs to be healed. And we are now being called to heal that instead of just ignoring it and feeling like, yeah, it's basically healed. We've basically done it. I think this is a opportunity to face that we have not healed it fully and that it needs our love and attention and our light. And in that way, we can sort of look at this moment as a gift. I mean, it is a challenge, and it is, I'm not trying to diminish what it will mean for people and just call it a good thing. I don't mean that. But I think when we can reframe it as a call to action, a call to look at the parts of our collective selves that need healing, that need love. How can we look at this other group of people who we feel we disagree with so strongly, who we feel have voted almost to like unsupport us? How can we turn around in the face of that and still love them and still support them and still show them that we are in community with each other, even if we don't see things the same way, that we have each other and that we love each other, even though we may disagree or not be in understanding of each other's needs. It's a hard thing to do. And I'm working on that, but I thought it was a beautiful call from our angels and guides to remember that, first of all, we are so loved and we are so supported, and that we are here to co-create a new world that is better than the world we found ourselves in. And if that isn't the call of this moment, I don't know what is. And so then I'll move on to, I think it's Lizy or Leezy Revelation. Beautiful image. And I got this card right way up. And like I said, I got it twice. So feels like it's a message we need. There are moments when synchronicity brings all the elements together for a flash of insight to rise up in you in a glorious epiphany. Whatever was not clear becomes crystalline in an instant. It's as if you are able to simultaneously perceive every facet in a diamond. You know without a doubt that you're on the right track as deep understanding sinks into your very soul. In this moment, change and transformation takes place, and a transcendent moment is offered to you as an extraordinary gift. Now is one of those times. The Chinese goddess Lizi, mother of lightning, brings revelations into your life with a flash. She gifts you this as a result of all the hard work you have put into dismantling your old self and making space for who you want to become. This is a very auspicious time. And so obviously when I first read that, I thought, is this a very auspicious time? This feels like a frightening time, a heavy time, a time where I was full of hope and now I'm full of despair. But I think it kind of points to the same thing of seeing our purpose in an even clearer way, seeing the call of people who are so full of love and compassion and understanding, who see the world we want to create so clearly and see that it is now that we must take steps towards it. It is now that we must come together, even in the face of this challenge, this ugliness, and shine our beauty on it, shine our love on it, shine our light on it. That is what I believe we are being called to do. And this situation has made it even clearer that that is what we are here to do, even on a small scale with one another, shining our light so brightly to the ones around us who are struggling with this, showing them that they are still loved and supported, even if this has made them feel like, in a larger sense, they are not supported and they are not loved. I can support and love the people in my life unconditionally. And I can do that even for people who disagree with me or who I disagree with and who I want to help see the world that we are trying to create. And I know in this hummingbird community that we are trying to create a world where we love the earth like we love ourselves, where we love each creature, where we help foster a world where each person can shine their unique bright light, can live a life that lights them up, can feel supported, can be free to express what they feel is their purpose, and to do so in a way that is authentic, with integrity, for the freedom and authenticity of everyone around them. That is the world that I am calling in today. And I know that it will not necessarily be easy, but it will be so worth it. Every step forward, every win is worth it. I am living proof of that. I'm so grateful to every person who has helped move this vision forward. And I know that generations to come will feel that about us in this moment. So I hope that that has been helpful. And thank you for holding space for me while I step into a space. I've never done a reading for the collective. I've only done a reading for myself. So thank you for supporting me as I took a leap of faith with you all. I hope that was helpful. Again, I'm sending you all so much love. Know that you are not alone. We are together in this, and we will find a way to shape a new world, a world with more love and support for everyone. Thank you so much for listening, and sending you all so much love. For more information on Taylor and her work, go to angelsandamethyst.com or connect with her on Instagram at angels_and_amethyst. She is the one verified account with this name and will never DM you for a reading. If you have any questions about intuition, spirituality, angels, or anything and everything magical, please email contact@magichourpod.com. We will answer listener questions once a month in our solo episodes. Are you an aligned business owner that would like to advertise to our beautiful hummingbird community? Please email contact@magichourpod.com. Make sure you're subscribing to Magic Hour so you never miss the magic. And don't forget to leave us 5 sparkling star reviews. They help more magical people find the pod. Please screenshot and email your 5-star reviews to contact@magichourpod.com, and we will send you a free downloadable angelic meditation and enter you to win an angel reading with Taylor Page. The next giveaway will happen when we hit 166 5-star reviews. Thank you for listening to Magic Hour with Taylor Page. Remember, you